Today, we're going to dig into one of the biggest questions out there. How do our childhoods literally create the blueprint for who we become as adults? All right, let's jump right in.
I mean, really think about it. It's a question we all chew on, right? Why do I handle stress this way? Why are my relationships the way they are? Well, so often the real answers start way, way back, long before we even have clear memories.
So picture this. In our first few years, our brain is like a massive construction site, just buzzing with activity. And every experience we have, the good, the bad, all of it, is laying down these crucial neural pathways. It's the actual architecture of our mind that we'll use for the rest of our lives. This is what we're calling our childhood blueprint.
So let's start with that foundation. How do we learn our very first, most fundamental lessons about ourselves and about the world?
Well, the psychoanalyst Erik Erikson had this brilliant way of looking at it. He saw these early years as a series of big questions we're trying to answer. As a baby, the huge question is, can I trust this world? Then, as a toddler, when we're trying to do things on our own, is it okay to be me? A little later, when we start to take action, it becomes, is it okay for me to do stuff? And finally, when we head off to school, we're asking, can I actually make it out here? The answers we get to these questions become the bedrock of our personality.
And a huge part of how we answer those questions comes down to this one idea: attachment theory. That first major relationship with a caregiver is basically our training ground. When that person is consistently there for us, comforting and responsive, we build what's called a secure attachment. And that doesn't just make us feel safe as kids, it literally sets the stage for trust, empathy, and how we handle our emotions in all our future relationships.
Okay, so if attachment is the foundation, what are the building materials? Let's talk about the positive stuff, the experiences that help construct a healthy, resilient person.
Now this is really interesting. You'd probably guess that having an imaginary friend as a kid is the secret sauce for social skills, right? But some new research found something a little different. While having that imaginary buddy was linked to being better at seeing things from another person's perspective, it was actually general fantasy play. You know, pretending to be a superhero, creating whole worlds. That was tied to being more helpful, more empathetic, and more emotionally intelligent as an adult.
And this quote just nails it. It's the act of imagining, of practicing what it's like to be someone else, of navigating these pretend social worlds that really builds up those crucial social and emotional muscles we need for life.
But of course, it's not just about play. The blueprint also gets reinforced by the people around us, and that feeling that we belong. These are what researchers have started calling positive childhood experiences.
I mean, just take a look at this. Supportive friendships. It seems so simple, but it's a perfect example of a PCE, a really powerful experience that sends a child the message you matter, you're supported, and you have a place here.
So, what do we mean when we talk about PCEs? Well, a huge study identified several key ones. Things like feeling you could actually talk to your family about your feelings, knowing your family had your back, being part of community traditions, feeling like you belonged in high school, having supportive friends, and this one's huge, having at least 2 adults who weren't your parents take a genuine interest in you. Every single one of those is a vital piece of building material for a strong blueprint.
But what happens when that blueprint gets challenged? What happens when a childhood isn't just about positive building blocks, but also has to endure storms that can shake the very foundation?
This is what researchers call adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs for short. We're talking about really traumatic stuff, like abuse, neglect, or growing up around violence. These are events that can seriously disrupt a child's development and leave lasting cracks in their psychological foundation.
And you know, adversity isn't always one big event. Take the chronic stress of growing up in poverty. Research shows it has these deep, lasting effects. It's linked to lower confidence, a real aversion to taking risks, and a mindset that's laser-focused on just getting through today because you can't afford to think about tomorrow. It literally shapes your decision-making for the rest of your life.
And here's the really tricky part. When kids face trauma, they develop coping skills to survive. Being hyper-aware of your surroundings, for instance, is a brilliant survival tool in a dangerous home. But in adulthood, that same tool can turn into chronic anxiety or make it hard to trust people. It's a coping mechanism that outlives its original purpose.
But, and this is a really big but, this is where the story takes a powerful and honestly a very hopeful turn. Because adverse experiences are not your destiny. That blueprint, it can be reinforced. We can absolutely build resilience.
Remember those positive childhood experiences we talked about?
Well, researchers found something incredible. They don't just add good things to our lives.
They actively protect us from the damage of the bad things. They have a powerful buffering effect.
The data shows this really clear dose-response relationship. Just think of it like a vaccine for your mental health. The more doses of these positive experiences a kid gets, the more protection they have against things like depression later in life.
And how much of an impact are we talking about? Get this. Adults who had 6 or 7 of these PCEs had a 72% lower chance of suffering from depression. 72%. That's massive.
And this right here, this is the part that just blew me away. Look at people who went through a lot of adversity, 4 or more of those ACEs. If they had very few positive experiences, their rate of depression is almost 60%. But for people who went through that same high level of adversity, but also had a lot of positive experiences, the rate plummets to just 21%. Positive experiences literally save lives.
And when you get down to it, it all comes back to these fundamental human needs, right? A foundational experience like feeling safe and protected by a grown-up at home, that can be an anchor that helps you heal and be resilient, no matter what storms you face.
This quote really just sums the whole thing up. The point of all this isn't to get stuck blaming the past. It's to understand it. Because that self-awareness, that's the key that unlocks the door to actually making a change.
Because the blueprint is powerful, yeah, but it is not permanent. We can't go back and tear down the foundation, but we can absolutely build on top of it. We can renovate. We can see our old patterns and make a conscious choice to create new, healthier ones.
So, I guess the final thought is this. Your childhood blueprint is your starting point, but it is not your destiny. The most important question isn't just about what was built for you back then, but what you choose to build for yourself, starting right now.